What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's podcast. We have a really special guest. His name is John. He runs Leatherwood Outdoors on YouTube. I think they're at 230,000 subscribers, and then they have a secondary channel, which he explains why he did that years ago. And that one's at like 80,000, so they get quite a lot of views. And it's a pretty cool video because you can learn all about Pennsylvania big woods hunting. He gives some cool stories, some crazy cool stories of some experiences that he's had. Almost all of it is actually over audio, just because he didn't have the Zoom ability with his computer. So because of that, we just did it over audio, which is perfectly fine. So you guys can listen to this while you're driving to work or something. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you see me at Huntstock. If you do, stop by. I'll have like a little booth there. So see ya.
We have the perfect match of agriculture, big woods, hardwoods, different types of terrain. Some places where we're at like 40, 50 deer per square mile.
Yeah, pretty good. How are you? Good. Hopefully this app works. I'm trying to record it through the phone call, so that's what the message was that was saying that.
Oh, okay. Well, if it doesn't work, we can always try it again another time.
100%. Well, first of all, how are you? I'm Kyle. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, not bad. I was looking on some of your YouTube channel and see you do a lot of fishing and stuff like that, and yeah, I'm doing all right. Pretty good.
So you have some context of who I am. So I live in southern New Hampshire.
Yep.
Not in Pennsylvania, but I have some buddies that hunt out there, and my neighbor actually owns a couple acres in Pennsylvania. I don't know whereabouts, but
okay.
I do this little hunting podcast and kind of share different opinions. I've interviewed Steve Shirk, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep. I saw that you interviewed him. Yep.
Yep. And then and just love talking about hunting. So for me, I mostly bow hunt, but I'm really getting into guns and muzzleloader this year. And I love your videos when it comes to the flintlock stuff. I think that's super cool.
Oh yeah, that especially dressing up, you don't see that at all. I mean, let alone the flintlock stuff. We were one of the first people on YouTube putting flintlock stuff on YouTube, but then to go that step further and actually reenact a true, real hunt and get it on film, that's going to another level. And then half the time I'm doing it by myself, self-filming it. So that's just it takes almost the whole season just to make one of those videos.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how hard it is to self-film. Even if it's a doe or a buck, it's a deer, you got many eyes on you, and you're trying to film it all at once.
Yep. It really does. I tell a lot of people that it gets to the point that even like a big buck, if you're really dedicated to getting it on camera, you're not even going to, you're going to end up messing up the hunt because you're going to try to get it on camera. And I tell a lot of those guys, I'm like, listen, don't beat yourself up, because some people aren't that dedicated, and they'll be messing around with the camera and let a big buck go or not get the shot. And it's like, listen, if you're not going to have fun filming, then don't do it. For me, it's just beyond, I have to film everything. I'm going to be the guy that I'll be okay if I spook the big buck because I'm trying to get it on camera, because I just know even if it was right there giving me a broadside shot, I'm still going to be messing with the camera. And then I'll be kicking myself that I never got it on camera. That's just the way I've been doing it for so long that I can't do anything without the camera anymore.
Yeah, I'm on the middle ground because I did spook a big buck. It was late October, and I think it was on a new moon, and I had these two bucks coming through. It was actually near a golf course that goes out to a big field, and there's some wood bedding and stuff in between. And I was in Massachusetts, and I was hunting there with my bow, and the buck saw me in my climber, because I wasn't in the thickest tree. It was the only one that was open, and he saw me, and he just looked right at the camera when I moved the arm, and the rest was history.
Huh.
But that stuff happens, like you said. That's kind of a risk you have to take when you're self-filming, and it's something that if there's a giant deer, like one that I'll never get a bigger one, honestly, I'm gonna shoot it even if it's not on camera, and that's just where I'm at in my life right now, just because some of those bigger bucks are harder to come by.
Oh, I know. I can't say that won't ever happen with me, but I have yet to see one that I haven't been able to get the camera on it yet. So that still might happen to me sometime if it ever happens. Even those big ones don't come by for me, but I mean the last one I shot just happened that when I set the tripod down and turned the camera on, I didn't have to move the camera. It was already focused straight on the deer. And but that was going on 9 years ago or more, so we'll see if I ever get another chance at another big one.
So was that the 10-point that you killed, the super symmetrical one?
Yep.
That is one of my
also known as the 3040 Craig buck.
Yep. 100-year-old gun. Yeah. Do you want to give me some context? I've rewatched that video about 5 times, but for people that haven't seen it.
Yep. Yeah. That video, that was the last buck I killed. So, and then the buck before that was 8 years before that, and they were. I killed 3 big ones in a row, one with a rifle and then 2 back-to-back with a bow, and they both made Pope and Young. And that was in the mid-2000s. But there's a reason for that, and that reason is because of Pennsylvania adopted antler restrictions right before that. But since then, I've been behind the camera a lot. I take a lot of family members out. My dad is in the best hunting spot right now. The past couple of years, and getting some stands up that we can sit in, and then I can film some other guys. And I shot a doe first thing of daylight last year, and that's just unheard of in Western PA. You're going to shoot a doe first thing before you wait for a buck. That's just like unheard of. And because it's not about just shooting a big rack, even though that's what I want to shoot for a buck. I'm a meat hunter. So all the people that say, you're just wanting to be a rack hunter, I don't know what they say to that video when they see I shoot a doe before, crack of daylight, I shoot a doe. I don't know what they say about that. So.
Well, and weren't you looking for a doe to shoot with the Craig?
Yeah, I went originally out to shoot a doe. Yeah. Yep.
Was that on your land or the power lines? Was that like public or what?
Yeah, that was on my land. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. Now, that buck was traveling on a whole bunch of different guys' property. I knew some guys that had it almost within bow range in rifle season, and my cousin from Florida, a mile away from where I shot it, he saw it twice on opening day and couldn't get a shot at it. He was looking the wrong way, walking through a field, and there was like 3 little patches, 3 trees and some brush in the middle of a field. And he was walking by it, never thinking a deer would be laying there, and it ran out of that little pile of trees and bushes and down into the woods, and he wasn't ready. Well, he come by later in the day, and then that deer go right back in there, and he walked by again thinking there's no deer in there, because why would a deer come back in there? And it ran out again. So I don't know how it made it to the second week when I shot it, because it was all over the place. But
when you say opening day, do you mean opening of bow or gun?
A rifle.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I know he came close at least one time in archery season to getting shot, but in the rifle season, he was close all the time to getting shot. I don't know how he made it. How he made it that long.
I mean, that's a perfect symmetrical buck. I don't know. What did you score him, or do you not care about that necessarily?
Yeah. I got him scored. I got him officially scored by the Game Commission, Pennsylvania Game Commission, but I never entered him into the record books of Pennsylvania. I have all the papers, and I just never sent it in. But he scored 147 gross. and netted 142, I think, somewhere around there, 142 and some change, I think, net. And that is with a 14-inch inside spread.
That is incredible. That's such a small difference from gross to net because he's so symmetrical.
Exactly. And, the crazy thing that I thought of is he's a 14-inch inside spread. And if he would have just been that 18, 19, 20-inch without gaining any bone, just spreading, he would have went into the 150 class without a single inch antler.
Wow.
Now that's using the Pope and Young scoring system. And that system, in my opinion, I like that system, but that's not the popular system anymore. You got Buckmasters, you have all these other different scoring systems that people are saying, and I'm used to saying, when I say this class of buck, I'm talking from the Pope and Young or the Boone and Crockett, scoring system. But these new scoring systems are so different. They're letting a lot more bucks going into the record books that way. And I think it's all, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit money driven, because then they get money for that, and people get, they want to say that they shot a record book buck. And so I never really understood the new different types of scoring things. But those were the, by the time 10 years from now, and you say the old scoring system of Pope and Young, I don't know if, anymore. I keep talking to people, oh, you made a record book, where's the new scorer at, the Pope and Young? And, oh, not Pope and Young, it's something else. And I'm like, oh. To me, it's like, I don't know if it just kind of, to me, it diminishes what it is, even if you did shoot a monster. It just is like, I don't know. That's my opinion on that, though.
No, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I killed one last year, and it was right about, I actually was out at college in Idaho, and I killed that one, and it was like 123 or something. And I obviously, it wasn't enough for Pope and Young. It was with my bow and stuff, but I didn't really care. I'm like, that's pushing the lines. Even if I did like a Buckmaster or something else to get more, more closer to the record book, I'm the same way with you. I use the Pope and Young and the Boone and Crockett, and I understand people's arguments with the mass and the water displacement methods and all sorts of different things. But in the end, like you said, it's same backstraps, can't eat antlers, but they're sure, I always say you can't eat them, but you can definitely savor over them. You can make your mouth water when you see a big buck.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And when did you start getting into filming? So just so people that are listening to this understand, so his YouTube channel, I believe, is Leatherwoods, but you also have a second one because you got super famous, so you wanted a second income, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No. Well, what happened is during that time, a long time ago, and I have to say a long time ago because it doesn't feel like I've been doing YouTube that long, but it's been crazy how long I have been doing it. But when early on in YouTube, around that 2011, 2010, 2011, 2012 area, if you were getting really popular, obviously people wanted to see more. And if your content was really, really good and you started making a lot of content, obviously the more content you put out, the less quality it is, because it might take a whole season to make a really good deer hunt video, but then if people are wanting a video every couple of days, then you're just out there videotaping whatever. Well, so what guys were doing, people that had really big YouTube channels that were getting lots of views and people wanted to see more and more and more, started making second channels, spin-off channels of their original channel. So it was like, hey, if you want to see extra content, the behind the scenes, the more stuff, go to our second channel, because they didn't want to diminish. And this is where the whole mindset of YouTubers have changed. Back then, people cared about their subscribers. they actually cared what their subscribers were seeing. It wasn't trying to get as many subscribers as possible, although that was a goal, but that is different than what it is today.
Yeah.
So back then, we just thought, we have all these things that we could do. Like, people want to know, how do you cook your venison? How do you, do your trout? How do you clean a gut of deer? You have all this stuff. So instead of bogging down the main channel, so when people go to the channel and looking through the videos, they're going to get all good stuff. And we thought, we'll put all that other stuff, all the other different stuff. It doesn't have to be, it's not that it's second-rate quality. It's just extra stuff, that we film. And some of those videos are, got millions of views also. And so we just made a second channel. Today, it's not like that today. Because I wish I would have never done that, because now everybody just has one channel and they put everything on there, because the main goal is the more videos, the more you pump out content, then your channel gets bigger, and it's all about numbers. So then you can take those numbers and you go to sponsors and you say, look how many people I have. And then after that, then it became like clickbait videos. So it wasn't even anymore about your original subscribers that got you to where you are now. It's saying, hey, you guys did your job. I'm not making videos for you guys anymore. I'm making videos to catch people who are all about my clickbait stuff and are subscribing because they just like this new form of hook, hook you with a good hook at the beginning of the video and keep you there. And then after like 15 minutes, you're like, what did I just watch? I just wasted my time. Like, I really didn't need to sit there and watch 15 minutes. But you're going to watch the next one I put out, because I'm going to have a really catchy title and a cool thumbnail, and can't help but click on it. You know what I mean? And I tried to stay away from doing that, because I literally watched people's channels. Their comments were not good comments. They're like you could tell who the people were that were their biggest fans, saying, if you're going to do this, I'm just going to unsubscribe. What's going on here? This isn't who you are. So that, I see that becoming, something that's in the past. You don't really see today.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've come into the same aspect where I'm seeing people post shorts, and I kind of did that. I did it more of like a vlog style to get my 1,000 subscribers and basically keep up my views, because they started to pay you for shorts. And obviously I don't make really any money on YouTube, and that's not why I do it. I just like to share with people my passion for the outdoors and God's creation, and I think that's a super fun thing that we can do. And I really haven't invested, besides like really nice GoPros, in much filming equipment compared to other people. So this year I'm going to try to do better and try to create a quality storyline, and that's where I'm doing something called the New England Slam. I kind of made it up. It's hunting Maine, Massachusetts, and Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, and possibly Vermont, cool. And trying to get a buck in each state. So that's what I'm doing this year, and trying to create a whole cool video series.
Yeah, and I always tell everybody, we never got into videotaping for the views. I remember, to answer your question, when did I start videotaping? When I was a little kid. I mean, when I was able to hold a video camera. And when I was a little video camera, the cameras weighed 10 pounds, because they were the VHS tapes that you held on your shoulder.
Yep.
That's what I started with, because I grew up with my dad doing what I did, videotaping everything we went. Anytime he videotaped me shoot my first deer. When I was 5 years old, we videotaped me floating down the boat in the creek. We were fishing, and a bear crossed the river in front of us while we were in the boat. All those little things. And he was actually mounting cameras on boats with like people do with GoPros now, to look back at them. He was doing that back in the early 90s with me and my brother, when we would go fishing on a John boat. And so I was just naturally around video cameras. So when I was able to start hunting on my own, it is like I needed a video camera. And so it went from the VHS to the high 8 tapes, the mini DVDs. And then right around the time that digital started coming out, even though it was quite a little bit more expensive to buy digital cameras, that's when YouTube come out. And then it was just sort of like, hey, we would have to take a video camera if we saw a big buck and videotaped it. We would have to take it to the family's house or friend's house and plug it into the TV to show anybody anything. When YouTube come out and then the digital cameras come out, well, then I started converting everything over into digital format, and YouTube come out, then we could just send the whole thing in an email, and people could watch it on their computer. And so that's how I got started, and then just the other guys that are filming, we all went to the same high school, we all knew each other, and some of the other guys were doing the same thing. They found out I was doing that, and they said, hey, we got some stuff, you want to edit it? And I said, hey, we're all from the same area, let's all put it in one channel and go from there. And on the back of our minds, we're thinking, are we going to be like the next Realtree or something? But that wasn't the main goal. The main goal was just to be able to put our videos somewhere that we didn't have to go. We just thought it was the coolest thing. We didn't have to go to mom and dad's house to show them what we videotaped. We could just take it, put it on the computer, and send them an email. And then we could send somebody down in Florida, our cousins or relatives anywhere. You just send a mass email out. And it was just, it was just by word of mouth that it grew. And but I think one of the biggest things is, we have the recurve, the traditional bow hunting and the traditional rifle hunting, like the flintlock muzzleloader hunting. We have that stuff that you don't see on TV very much. And I think that was what sprung us up, not only just because we do deer hunting, but we were also doing everything: ice fishing, mushroom hunting, rattlesnake hunting, you name it. We were trying to film it. If we don't have a video of it, it's not because we didn't try or we don't do it. It's just that it's hard. Like a bear hunt. Yeah. We have bears around here. They're just hard. And half the time, some of the guys don't even care whether they shoot one or not. And then you got to have a lot of cameramen and a lot of drivers, and it just doesn't work out. Same thing with like coyote hunting. Coyote hunting is completely different than like shooting coyotes in Texas. You just can't do what you see on TV here in Western PA like you see on TV. But
100%. In Western PA, how are your deer numbers? Do you have like a bunch of them, or are they running around like they're?
They where we live. What also is kind of crazy is PA is known for, a lot of Pennsylvanians say the state has no deer, which is ironic because we're like in the top 3 or 4 in deer kills and hunters combined in the country. But where we are at specifically in southern Clarion County and northern Armstrong County, so for anyone that's listening that's not familiar with Pennsylvania, you can find that on a map. That we're in one of the highest concentrations of deer in the entire state outside of the cities. And it's kind of weird when I say that because the cities actually have a lot of deer in it in some places.
Yeah.
Like Pittsburgh has so many deer, they can't even get people to come in and kill them off because like the deer are living in between these $1 million houses with like one tree between them. And they just feed them, the locals there. A lot of the people in the city are anti-hunting anyway, so they don't let anybody in. And then if you do find places, you got to kill that deer and make sure it drops. It can't run more than 100 yards. You're already through 2 streets and through somebody's yard. But they never sell out of tags. They want like so many deer killed down there. But outside in the rural parts of Pennsylvania, we have the perfect match of agriculture, big woods, hardwoods, different types of terrain, lots of places to hide, lots of water. So we just have an explosion of deer where we're at. I mean, back in 2012, it was nothing to see 60, 70 plus deer on opening day. But now, I mean, you're not going to probably see those numbers. They're probably going to be less than half. So if you could probably see 30 deer on a really good day. on opening day if you're in a good spot. But there's people in Pennsylvania that watch our videos and are like that's because it's private property, and it's like, well, no, you can go to public property anywhere and do that, and see that many deer. There's a lot of state game lands that are bordering private property also. We got a lot of red tag, which red tags you can, the farmers, they can't get people to come in and shoot the deer off. So there's a season through that's later than the regular hunting seasons, that you can go in, and shoot deer. Mostly you can only shoot the does. The game commission won't let you shoot bucks. But yeah, there's a lot of that going on. I know people that kill a lot of deer just with red tags, and like they're killing deer like crazy, and you can't just shoot. They still can't kill them off. So that's where right now where we're at, we have an abundance of deer, and that's another thing in our videos. There's, like I said, you go just an hour north from where we're at, and it drops. We could be, there's some places where we're at like 40, 50 deer per square mile.
Wow.
But you go an hour north from here, and it's like down to, I don't know, 5 deer per square mile. There's just, it's just nothing. And that's just because there's absolutely no agriculture. There's no understory. There's nothing for them to eat. And then if you go an hour and a half and get into the elk range, the Pennsylvania elk range, then you're down to there's not very many deer there, because then they're also competing, and the deer just don't get as big either.
That's incredible. I think it's amazing how deer can adapt, but also the population, the difference. Like I know in Cayuga Heights, New York, there's places where there's that 30 per square mile. Like where I live, I think there's a decent amount of deer. There's like, comparative to other places, it's very small. It's like 2 to 6 per square mile. So there's not many. My dad's lived here my parents are from England, but my dad's lived here for 40 years, and he has only seen 2 bucks ever. He doesn't hunt though, but that's just driving in the backwoods of New Hampshire, and the fact that he hasn't seen more just shocks me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like you just go 2 hours or 4 hours away to Pennsylvania, and you can be in whole herds of them, and it's interesting. That was before antler restrictions. Now it's just they're getting better quality.
Yes, yeah, and even back then, like I remember my first few years of hunting, because I started in, I think it was 96 when I first started hunting, and there was no antler restrictions, and we only had 3 days of doe season all year long. I mean, you could hunt with a bow, but back then there were very few bow hunters, and so everybody was a rifle hunter, and you were odd if you archery hunted. Like you were the next level dedicated. There were very few bow shops around, and so you could hunt doe that whole bow season, but nobody did. Everybody just waited for that rifle season, and you had 2 weeks of buck, and then after that you had 3 days of doe season, or maybe the doe was before the buck season. I can't remember which way it was, but you only had 3 days of doe. And right now we have not the same. We still have that like 6 weeks of archery season to shoot doe, but then you have a whole week of muzzleloader, which you can use any type of muzzleloader to shoot a doe. And then we have almost 2 weeks concurrent. Now it depends on where you're at in the state, because I think some parts of the state it's only 1 week. 2 full weeks of doe season with the buck, so you can shoot buck or doe the entire 2 weeks. And then you still got that late flintlock, which has kind of exploded also recently. A lot of people are getting into flintlocks and getting into hunting for the late season, which there's also that late archery season, but there's very few people dedicated to get out there in 0-degree weather with a bow. But
What's your flintlock? Is that just like till the end of December, or what is that?
no, it always starts the day after Christmas. So it's always the day after Christmas, and it depends on where Christmas lands. So if Christmas lands like on a Saturday, obviously there's no hunting on Sundays, which we only have 3 Sundays, which that's a whole other topic there, because we just started hunting on Sundays just the past couple of years. But there's no Sunday hunting in that late season. You would have to wait till Monday. But then it also depends on if that ends up, let's say Christmas starts on a Sunday, Christmas is on Sunday, and you can start hunting Monday, then you got almost a full 5 more days of the season. So sometimes it's almost like 2 weeks, and then sometimes it feels like it's almost 3 weeks. So it really depends on where Christmas lands on what day. Depends if you get a couple extra days in the season, because there's usually always, I think there's always 3 Saturdays of the late season. So if you can get your Christmas to start on Saturday or Sunday, then you start with Monday, Tuesday, and then get to that first Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Have you always hunted just I want to get it from not being from Pennsylvania, I would like a perspective. I've heard the same thing from some people being like, oh, it's easy seeing that amount of deer on private land. Oh, it's easy. Most of the land in Pennsylvania is private, but then I hear a lot about there's public mountains and big woods. It's just obviously harder. In the ag country where you live, is it majority private land?
Yes, and but even when I say that, there's some big state game lands that are not that far from me. Several miles, 4 or 5 miles from me, there's some big state game lands that some of these game lands were even rated the top 10 in the entire state in the past. That was years ago when they said that, but a lot of it is probably like you said, on private land, you can just drive your truck wherever you can and wherever you want if you own the land. Where on state game lands, you know, if you're way back in, you're going to be dragging that thing out. You're not going to be getting a 4-wheeler and taking it back in and hauling it out of there. And so with the state game lands, that can be a little bit of a deterrent. And so it prevents people from actually hunting too deep into the woods because then it's just that much work to come back out. And so you have a lot of people that might hunt state game lands. It might be that parking lot might be completely packed, but maybe only a handful of those guys shoot a deer. When there's enough deer for every single person in that parking lot to kill. But the problem is, you know, you got to be in shape, and it depends on how far you want to go in. And then it could be a little bit of a deterrent. Everybody's in the same parking spot. You only have so many places to access the state game lands. You go in the woods, a little bit, and you see one guy walk a little bit, and you see another guy, and it kind of deters people to turn around and walk back out. But
100%.
They don't know that if they would just go past that second guy and go to where they can't see anybody anymore, they might be in a hot spot, So a lot of that, I think, is because a lot of people don't do their homework on state game lands. And I know people that in Clarion County, it's not called Clarion University anymore. They changed the name, but we have a university in Clarion County, and there's several big game lands, state game lands all around the county. And it's all big woods. There's not a whole lot of agriculture, but big state game lands to hunt, lots of room. And I know guys that were from the city, from Pittsburgh, that were hunters and came up and went out on the state game lands and killed nice 10-point bucks. And, and they don't even live there. They were going to college, and just didn't have anywhere to hunt. So they just went to the state game lands and killed a nice 10-point. I mean, I've seen it happen. I know the guys that have done this and have sent me the pictures. And, I know guys are saying, hey, I'm going to college up here. You're from that area. Do you know where? And I'm like, hey, just hit the game lands. There's deer everywhere. just hit the game lands and, do a little bit of scout and find a good deer trail. See if you can find a state game lands. Use the Google Maps and see if you can find one close to a cornfield. See how close you can get to that cornfield from the state game land access and find a good deer trail. And that's about as good as I can tell you. And I get reports back, hey, I killed a really nice buck. I killed a deer, thanks. So these are people that don't even live here, that are just randomly just going on to state game lands and killing bucks and shooting deer. And now, most of that was in archery season, because then during rifle season, they usually go back to their family camp and hunt on their, family property. But, during archery, and they're at, college, they get, they're just leaving 10-minute drive from the college and hunting game lands and killing nice deer. So it is possible.
Yeah, there was a kid at college in Idaho, and I guess he didn't know really anything about hunting, but he got a hunting license, and he was driving down this dirt road in the middle of some sagebrush, and he had this tag, and he basically saw this deer, and he stepped off the road 50 yards and shot it, and ended up being over 200 inches, a mule deer. So, I mean, sometimes it's luck, and sometimes you need that. But when I think of public land, I think of three things. I think of pressure, so finding unique ways to access public land, whether you knock on private permission and try to cut through theirs to get to it, is one way I've found, or just getting away and hiking, crossing rivers. The second thing I've seen is just finding properties that are overlooked. Maybe they're next to a highway where nobody's going to access. And the third one is just hunting close to places where you can't hunt. So like you said, butting up to private land or the suburbs or different places like that. That is where I've found a lot of pinch points or primary scrape areas where they're kind of right on that border.
Yep. And that's where a lot of public land. Steve Shirk is a perfect example. I mean, to say that you're a guide on public land should speak volumes to the people who say there's no deer, there's no big bucks, there's nothing out there on public land. For him to be a guide on public land should speak volumes to anybody. To be in a state with that many hunters, and even in an area that doesn't have the amount of deer that we do here in southern Clarendon County, northern Armstrong, in this specific area. They don't have the numbers because it's all big woods. There's very little to no agriculture up there. Now, they don't have any elk in that area, which is a big help. And they're doing a lot because it's Allegheny National Forest up there. A lot of stuff is getting timbered. So you got openings that come up and stuff like that, where some parts of the state, some of these places, they don't timber. So you have a lot of these opportunities that for guys that are hunting public land anywhere, if you can find any type of public land that has been timbered recently, you're going to have all that new growth up. You're going to have all that cover, and deer are just going to go in there and bed down. And that's where I found all my sheds from this past shed hunt season. We're all near our property that we had 30 acres of our land timbered about 5 years ago, and those deer are in there because it's the only place on the whole property where it's new growth, because timber hasn't been harvested for all, since like the late 30s, early 40s. So there's lots of pools out there for guys to kill nice bucks on public land, and it makes me want to go hunt public land. Like when I went with Steve Shirk, and you can follow him on Facebook and all this, you can see the bucks that he has up there. It's crazy what's out there, and but yeah, you can kill just as big, if not bigger, bucks on public land than you can on just private land, because not all private land is equal either.
Oh, not at all. Nope. I have plenty of access to private lands that I've knocked on the door to try to get permission, and even if it's posted just to try to check it out, and I'll go scout it and be like, I'm never going to kill a buck here. There's just not going to be one here. And that's where it comes down to, you need to find the deer.
Yes.
Simply put, just based off scouting and not relying just on trail cameras. I will say Steve covers ground and he does it for a living, so he has more scouting time and hundreds of trail cameras to help, but that's no excuse that people can't go out and scout and find deer with the populations that they do.
Right. Yep. And here on private land, there's very few people to almost no one in this area that has enough land to keep deer 100% on their property, because these deer just roam for miles in a circle. And most people own 30, 40, if you're owning a lot of land, you own 100 or 200 acres. After 200 acres, if you own more than 200 acres, you have an exceptional piece of property, and that's still nothing. You need to own like a couple thousand acres to have a deer completely roam for a whole year and not go off your property. And that just, there's nobody, it's not like Texas, it's really small pieces of ground all connected, so everybody's seeing the same deer. And there's so many different places for them to hide, little rolly hills and stuff like this. And that changes throughout the state. I always say, the reason why I say Western PA instead of Pennsylvania is because, in my opinion, Pennsylvania can almost be broken up into 3 different places because it's just so different. You have North Central, you have like Western, and then you have the Eastern side. And they look, you go to those places and they're completely different. You would think that you traveled into a different state. And so you can't always judge Pennsylvania by just saying the word Pennsylvania. You got to almost break it up into 3 or 4 different subcategories and say, where are you talking about in Pennsylvania? Because if you're saying you're not seeing any deer and you're in Western Pennsylvania, something's really wrong. Now, if you're in Eastern PA, Southeastern PA, or some, in some of these places, I can understand. And the type of mountains and the type of terrain is just way different. You got big, giant Appalachian rolling mountains that are just thick, nasty laurel brush and rock covered that it's next to impossible to even get to the top of one of those things. Where here, I can walk from my house and make 2 laps up and down the hill from the top to the bottom, because it's not that steep of a climb, and I don't got rocks and all that other types of stuff. And so there's a lot of different things like that for the population of deer. But that doesn't mean that they're not killing monsters out east, and there's killing monsters all over Pennsylvania. It's just that the deer herd and how many and the type of land and the terrain also goes into how you hunt. And some land is difficult to hunt where others are not. And so that all plays into it when people say certain things about Pennsylvania hunting. It's very different around the state. And it goes also, you have some people that have, they just don't have good land. They don't have the right timber. They don't have the right stuff on their land. And the neighbor, is putting in food plots. They make sure they have the good oak trees to cut out all the junk birch trees and all the other stuff that's killing off all the good trees that the deer like. So there's lots of acorns and stuff like that. And, if you're not going to do that to your land, then you're going to have a hard time with your neighbor who's putting all his time and energy into making his property attract those deer to his property. And you're just going to hope, all you got to hope is that they shoot something and miss and it runs onto your property.
100%. And I think it's crazy how much land management and things have changed in the last, I don't know, 10 years, even though I'm very young, but I've seen the effects that it's had on, like, even in the last 5 years. I think more big bucks have consistently been killed in the Northeast more than ever before, whether it's antler restrictions, whether it's not as or mild winters. There's many different factors, but there's definitely more big bucks being killed than ever.
Yep. I agree. Like I said, when I killed my two Pope and Youngs. That was in 2006 and 2007, and in 2005 I killed a 14 point. At that time was, and then 2003 we killed a monster 13 point. Everybody was killing, and that was because in 2002 was the first year of the antler restrictions, and I actually killed a buck with my flintlock. The only buck I ever killed with a flintlock was in the first year of the antler restrictions, and it was 3 points up. So as long as you had 3 points on the side, you could shoot it. And then the following year, in 2003, they went to 4 points on the side, and that let a lot of deer go. That first year, people in Pennsylvania would sit in a deer shanty that was like the Taj Mahal, clear up on top of a mountain or a hill that was like just brush for as far as you can see, and they had all these rifles, and you just hear the rifle shots at 500-600 yards, guns unloading, and then you could tell that those deer went to the next property, and the next high-rise deer shanty started unloading on them. And you could just hear that wave of gunshots coming your way as the deer were moving. And that's the way it was. But when you had to count points, you were not counting points on a buck, a year-and-a-half-old buck at 100 yards. Half these guys can't see that, even with their scopes. And so it changed hunting a lot. There's a lot of people that hated it because the older crowd didn't understand. And, it got into, spike is always a spike. You had all these myths. I shoot the ones with the gray face and all these, cliche sayings that people say that, all this little tiny 4 point, which is a year-and-a-half old, is a 10-year-old deer, which it really never was. And that is starting to come out, because that's what a lot of the people would say. And I knew my neighbor, he would always say, I can't hunt the way I hunted. I said, "What? How did you like to hunt?" He goes, "I like to walk through the woods, jump a buck out of his bed, and shoot him before he gets away." And he can't do that now because he has to count the points. And my always thought was, why are you guys not shooting doe? Because the whole time this is going on, remember, nobody's shooting doe. This is why we see, when I say we saw 60, 80 deer a day, most of those, 90% of them were doe. And if you saw a buck, it most likely wasn't legal. It was like a spike. So very few people were shooting doe. Doe was almost looked at like if you couldn't shoot a buck, you shot a doe, or something like that. Very few people let me say this. It seemed like a lot of people looked down on doe hunting. But now that's not the case anymore. And people realize, listen, if you get the deer numbers down, and you make your habitat healthy, you can still harvest a lot of doe and they'll bounce back, because now instead of when you have 60 plus deer in your herd and you're killing that many bucks, a buck isn't going to breed every single doe. There were probably some does that didn't have fawns. And then at the same time, you had very few deer having triplets and twins. You saw lots of fawns. You still saw twins and you still saw triplets. You just didn't see as many. Now, almost every deer has twins or triplets. It's rare to see. If one has a single one, it's rare because now they have more food, and that's just the way the deer go. So you have to kill almost over 50% of the deer to consistently to even take that population down. But if you have lots of food, lots of places to hide, they're gonna bounce back real fast, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, we're not seeing the 60, 70 deer a day, but we're still seeing more deer than what you can shoot. That's still the good thing about it. You can still shoot, 2 or 3 doe, but the problem with that is you still have a lot of people that still will not shoot doe. They just will not shoot a doe the entire season. They say they want to fill their freezer with meat, but they will not shoot a doe. And so, that some of those guys end up, eating their tag. But hey, I'm out for meat, and if they're not going to shoot the doe, that just means more doe opportunities for me.
Well, for me, I think it's interesting that people are like that, because the does carry a lot of the genetics we've learned in the last couple of years, for
Absolutely.
buck genetics for
50%.
how big they get. Like you need to cull some of those does, and I think of it like, okay, if there's 70 does in a field before and now there's 30, they're going to have much more food, they're going to be healthier, and therefore they're going to have a little bit less stress because there's social stress. They fight. Does fight more than bucks do. I'm sure you've seen them hoof each other when they're trying to eat. They can be quite aggressive, and the social stress that's put on deer is known to shrink antlers. So I think it's interesting. There's a perfect line of where there's too many deer and just the right amount. But it's definitely helped in the last couple of years. I've never hunted Pennsylvania, but I've heard nothing but great things in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's getting better every year. Every year we're getting bigger bucks because there's more and more people that are passing bucks up. And here's one thing that I get the people that they're just never going to change. It doesn't matter what evidence, it doesn't matter what you put down in front of their face. They are stuck in that system of how they always hunted. You know, they're always going to shoot that first buck they see that's legal. You know, they get the buck fever. They can't help it. They're going to shoot it. You know, and there, a lot of those people, sadly, are either retiring from hunting or they're getting too old. This is the older generation. Those types of people, there's getting to be less of them, and there's a lot more people that are coming in saying, you know what, it's about the quality. It's not necessarily about the size of the rack. It's about the quality of the deer herd. And so the saying that, you know, if I pass that deer up, my neighbor will shoot it. That's the popular saying. So that was the popular saying here for even when the antler restrictions were going on. Well, my neighbor, he ain't going to count those points. He'll shoot that deer anyways if I pass it up. You know, it was almost like trying to find a reason to shoot an illegal deer, because nobody trusted their neighbor. But that logic says that if I pass
in New Hampshire,
here's how I combat that logic. If you're going to use the logic that your neighbor's going to shoot the deer, right? If you pass it up, okay. So what happens if you're going to say that your neighbor's going to shoot that buck? Then why can't you use the same logic that says if you shoot the buck, your neighbor will still shoot a buck? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People don't look at it that way. They think that buck right there, if I don't shoot it, then and I let it go to next year, I'll never get a second chance at it because my neighbor's going to shoot it. But if you're going to use the logic that your neighbor is absolutely going to kill a buck, okay, then even if you just use the same logic that says, because nobody knows if the neighbor is going to shoot the buck. This is just assume. You're going to assume that the neighbor is going to kill a buck. Then why not make the assumption that the neighbor is going to kill a buck regardless? Even if you fill your tag or don't fill your tag, the neighbor's going to fill his tag. So if you think of it like that, well, then I just flip it over. I just say the neighbor's not going to fill his tag.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I've actually heard I was listening to another podcast, and a guy said when he was trying to find land where there's big deer, he said he would actually choose land that all the neighbors, if it's brown, it's down saying. He would look for people like that in a lower income area to try to make a better land and basically more fitting to deer, because if you have a bunch of neighbors that are always holding out, then there's more higher odds that they'll shoot them. So I thought it was kind of interesting because I agree with you 100%. You know they're going to shoot a buck, but it doesn't mean it's the one that you passed. So
exactly.
If they shoot
yeah, you
buck,
just got to assume that they're going to fill their tag. So if you're going to assume that they're going to fill your tag, then you have to logically say that if you pass one up, you saved $1.
Exactly.
Even if it's not the buck that you passed up, it could be a different buck because you don't know what buck that neighbor's going to shoot. You can use that logic in every different way. And when you start turning the tables on that logic of killing a buck or not killing a buck, then people have never even thought of it that way. And they don't like it because they can't ever think of their neighbor not shooting a buck if they pass one up. And it's like, well, no, because I know that there's neighbors that are passing them up. That gives me confidence. If you can set the example, when I started passing deer up, nobody told me to pass deer up. My dad always passed deer up, so I just sort of thought, well, I want to shoot big bucks like my dad, because my dad always said, you can't. You want to shoot the big ones, you got to let them go, even if somebody else shoots them. You can't shoot them if they're dead. They ain't gonna get big if they're dead, and that's the logic. So I just started just passing deer up, and I'm seeing cousins and families, and plus I know my dad is looking for a bigger one, and I know some neighbors that are passing deer up, and now when you get a couple other neighbors, you got those people that are always like shooting a buck every year. All it takes is for them to go, you know what, I know that he's not going to shoot the deer, and I know the other neighbor's not going to shoot this deer, and I know, actually, I might actually let this go because I know there's a big buck running around. You know what I mean? They
100%.
might actually get their big buck, and that's great. Because even the guys that are passing those deer up, they're going to be okay if they don't shoot a buck that year. I'm okay if I don't shoot a buck. And a lot of people go, well, you're on private land. It must be nice. And it's like, I don't know. I've been hunting private land for going on, I've only killed one buck in the past 10 years almost. I don't know. Is that good? Some people, would you be able to do that? When I ask people, like, would you be able to pass deer up if you were to hunt private land and you hunted the way I hunted, you would shoot a lot of doe and not shoot bucks. And people go, oh, wait a minute. You see, when I put them in that position, but people don't look at it. They go, well, I wish I would be able to hunt your property. What that means is I wish I could go on and shoot all the deer that you pass up.
Exactly.
So that next year it won't look like that.
Yep.
That's what people mean when they say, oh, it must be nice to have private property.
Well, you guys did like a rifle hunt where you had a bunch of family and you guys killed like 3 or 4 8-points, and I heard back in Pennsylvania 30 years ago, it'd be like if you shot a big one, they'd be like, oh, good job, Jimmy, and you're like at the school, like an 8-point was like a big buck.
Yeah, you didn't talk about width or score. It went on how many points. Like you made the paper if you shot a 10-point because it had 10 points. And back then it was always a point counted as if a ring can hang on it. And so there are lots of guys that were trying to make every little bump and wiggle on a deer's antler a point. But I mean, most deer never got past a year and a half old. So most bucks don't even get 8 points at a year and a half old. So all you had to do is get one buck to 2.5 or a 3.5-year-old buck, which was almost unheard of, and get shot. They made the paper, and it wasn't like you just say it had 11 points. It had 11 points? Yeah, it had 11 points. That's crazy. Well, now that's nothing. That's nothing to hear, oh, he shot an 11-point. Awesome. But now it's like, shot an 8-point. Well, how big was it? You don't ask how many points now. You want to know the score because not all 8 points are the same. You have one. I knew a guy that last year shot a 160 class, not last year, the year before, shot a 160 class 8-point. I think he was in Virginia when he hunted. But it's like, that's a big 8-point. Then you hear you can have a little 10-inch that doesn't even make 50 inches, 8-point at the same time. So, like we were saying, it's just going to get better and better and better. Guys that are patient, guys that are about hunting, not about if it's brown, it's down. And it doesn't even necessarily get to the point where it's just all about the freezer meat either. We hunt not only just for the meat, and we don't hunt just to have a rack to hang in our house, but hunting should be at the core is being stewards of God's creation. So we should be wanting the best health for trees, for deer, for all wildlife. And when you don't come into it with a selfish ambition of what can I get out of this, what can I take out and not put anything in, well, then you're going to have problems. You're going to have areas of just no deer. You're going to have areas with poor habitat. You're going to have areas with not very big antlers. And you're just going to have that, fighting mentality with your neighbor, when if you just not care and just not realize what you're out there for, then it kind of relaxes you, and it's not like trying to be in the rat race to try to shoot more over the neighbor, and just kind of relax and say, hey, if the neighbor shoots one, that's great. If I don't, that's great too. Hey, I'm just out here to have fun, and we'll all hunt, and who gets one, and if we can get the neighbors to pass up and try to get some better quality deer, and we're all on the same team here, then that's good. If not, then I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing anyways, even if the neighbors don't do it, because I'm not out here to compete with the neighbors. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
and
out here
just because you're passing up deer doesn't mean you don't care about meat or anything. And there's a lot of pressure on the younger generation to pass deer. And I think if you're young and you haven't killed many deer, shoot whatever the heck you want. As long as it's legal and abides by the laws, I don't think there should be any pressure on a young hunter waiting and saying, oh, I need to shoot a Boone and Crockett. Or I literally had a friend tell me, he said, out in Idaho, he said, I need to shoot a big deer so I can prove other people wrong, and so I can prove that I'm a good hunter and make these other kids that found his sheds jealous. And I'm like, you are in hunting for the wrong reasons, if that's true.
Yep, and a lot of that has to do with just the way TV hunting is. It's all pushed on that. And to be honest, I quit watching deer hunting on TV since 2010. This is a really silly reason, but I had Dish and I paid for the extra channels of the Outdoor Channel and all that because I couldn't get enough hunting. But remember, at the same time, I'm starting YouTube, and I'm into YouTube, and there's a lot of videos of YouTube hunting on there. Well, that year, in 2010, the Steelers lost the Super Bowl. And because of that, and I thought, I could care less to even have this TV anymore. I canceled my Dish. I even canceled all the hunting. I'm like, I don't have hunting. And I said, you know what? I was like, the only thing that I can't get on the internet is sports. I said, I can watch the highlights, but I'm like, but then again, I thought to myself, I usually go to a friend's house or something to watch a big game. So I thought, I get my weather, I get all my hunting on YouTube, I'm just going to watch YouTube stuff. And then I was doing YouTube myself to the point where today, I don't even watch hunting. I don't watch any hunting on TV. I don't know what's out there. I don't know what Jim Shockey's doing. I don't know what any of these guys, I don't even know if they're still on TV. I don't know what Lee and Tiffany are doing. I don't know what anybody's doing anymore. I don't know. I haven't watched any of the hunting shows since 2010. And if somebody thought there was a good video or something, I tried to go to my parents' place to try to catch it at the right time or something. But other than that, I said, I get everything from YouTube. And it's the same way with YouTube. There's a lot of, garbage hunting channels out there too. But I was like, I do enough filming and stuff, and I'm outside that I'm busy with other things. When I come home, like I said, I'm to the point now where I got rid of that TV. I don't watch TV. I might be on the computer and on Facebook and all these other things a little bit more that fill in my time. But there, I'm at least interacting with people. I'm learning. I'm reading articles, or I'm uploading. I'm editing videos or something like that to post. That's where most of my time is now. And then with my family, we're growing, and so. I got a 2-year-old running around, so the videos are coming pretty slow. All the guys, Shane had a baby boy this year, Ryan Toth had a baby. I'm trying to think. Guys are, having kids, moving, all that type of stuff. So we don't upload the videos like we used to, and that's just because life gets busy, and I'm sure maybe when the kids get old enough to go along with us, then maybe the videos start back up a little bit more quicker. But our glory years are in the past for the amount of videos that we were pumping out. Now it's just a video now and then when we get the time. But that's where we don't get sucked into YouTube either. We're not doing YouTube for the money or the fame and everything like that. There's guys that quit their job and did it full time, and I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket because YouTube's already sort of against hunting and they can demonetize me anytime. And if all their power's in the finger of pushing a button, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. What happens when, hey, Duck Dynasty went up and down? You don't see them on everything in the Walmart anymore. And everybody's going to have their glory years and then in their peak. And you got guys like Jim Shockey that are consistent throughout the years and stuff like that, or Realtree and stuff like that, Michael Waddell. But for us, it's just like we're doing it the same way we started. We're doing it for fun, and we do it when we get time, and we don't have any sponsors or anything that we have to do stuff for. We can do it. We can stop. We don't have anybody to tell us what to do or how to do it. And that's the way we like it. And whatever money does come in from YouTube helps us just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I like your point. Like, family comes first before anything. And I think if someone puts hunting before that, I think there's always a moral line where you need to sometimes take a step back. Like, obviously, if you have a young kid, those are things that you need to figure out. And my dad did YouTube for a little bit, and they were wanting them to pump out a video every week, or they would demonetize them and stuff like that when YouTube was newer. So it's kind of interesting, everything that's changed. But I'll let you go in a second. I know we've been on the call for a little bit. But I wanted to ask you, do you have any crazy stories from from deer drives that have gone on, or any crazy moments like that you want to share before we end?
Well, I would say one of the craziest deer hunts that I was on, and I'm trying to think because I'm running through so many right now. I'm trying to think which one is the best one here. I would say one of the craziest things I ever saw was I'm trying to think what year that was. I would say it was probably maybe 6 years ago, and it was late flintlock season. And I was going through the woods, and I was right below like a secondary road, just a back road, a paved back road. And the neighbors' houses were up on it, and it's sort of this hillside. And I'm coming along this hillside, and it's real big oak trees, real big hemlocks. It's real big, mature forest. And there's these big, giant boulders scattered all along the hillside. Some of them are like faced high walls. And so you could use those to kind of sneak around. And I'm coming along this hillside, and I bump some deer. And they take off running. And they go right up towards they're going right to the road. Now, they're making the leaves rustle and everything, but I can hear a car coming. And these deer are on a beeline. And I'm like thinking in my head, these deer are at the rate they're going, and I hear this car coming, and I can kind of figure out, like, these deer are going to run right out in front of this car. And so I could just barely see where the road is. I can't see the car if it crosses, but I can see exactly when the deer jump over, like, the guardrail that's way up on top of the hill. And as soon as these deer jump, I can hear that car slowing down. Like, they didn't lay on their horn and the tires didn't squeal, but I can tell you they come to a quick stop. And all of a sudden, I hear leaves rustling again. And I watched this deer run over, and it's fat, and the car kept going. So it almost it sounded like the car was chasing the deer. So the deer didn't run directly back down the hill. It must have been running alongside the car. Well, it kept going, and as soon as the guardrail ended, it ended right at the top of this giant boulder, and the deer come running and leaped off of the high wall and probably jumped at least 20, 25 feet off that high wall. and I couldn't see it land because there was another boulder at the bottom that it missed. It landed in the leaves. It didn't land on any rocks, but it just had this thump. And I'm just sitting there going, I just watched a deer die. That's what I'm thinking to myself.
Yeah.
And then I just start walking because I'm going to walk over. I'm thinking I'm going to walk over and see if this deer's laying there dead. So I take like 2 steps, and as soon as I look up, here comes that deer running around that boulder, running right at me. It stops at like 10 feet from me, and I'm like trying to pull my gun up because I'm like, I'm going to shoot this thing. And it turns around and runs away without a scratch or a broken bone. And I walked over there, and I'm looking. I just see these leaves rustled, and I'm looking up at the top of that high wall, and I'm like, how in the world did this deer not die? Like, it should have broke a leg. I have no idea. It was the craziest thing I ever seen in my life. But it just goes to show you how strong these deer are. You know, it was. I still replay it in my mind. I'm thinking of it right now, and I have no idea how that deer didn't break a leg or die jumping off that high wall. And so that's probably the craziest story that I had ever seen while I was out hunting.
That's wild. I've seen videos of them jumping off overpasses onto highways or crazy stuff like that. But the craziest thing I've seen on a video was it had to be Iowa. Like, there's no other place there would be this many big deer. But there was like 4 Pope and Young bucks chasing a doe in a field, and this guy's videoing on the overpass, like near a river, and this buck almost hits the guy's truck door and then jumps off, and the guy's like, did he just die? And it landed right on its head, and it was just like wailing on the ground underneath the bridge. And I was like, that is so sad as like a hunter, but like that just shows you when they're running, they're just not thinking.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they're not thinking at all.
5 bucks chasing a doe into a lake to like breed her, almost drowning themselves. Like, it's just crazy the things they do.
Yeah. Yep.
But
just like for sure. I will say one thing I do have on camera. One of the craziest things that I have on camera, it's early. See, when I first started doing my archery videos, I did like a series. Every couple days I would upload. It was almost like a journal. So the titles were just like archery season from this date to this date. And I think it was in 2009 or 2010. It was the next to the last day of the archery season. And I thought I was hearing 2 bucks fighting. And I had 2 stands close to each other. One was in a food plot, and one was tucked in a tight, thick pine funnel. And I decided to hunt the funnel because I was hunting the food plot and I wasn't seeing anything. So I thought I'm going to go down into the funnel. And I heard this racket up by my food plot, and I thought it just sounded like bucks clanking their antlers. And it was driving me nuts that it was like the sun was just setting. It's on the horizon. It's starting to get dark. I thought, I got to hurry up and get up there while there's daylight, because if there's 2 bucks locked antlers or they're fighting, maybe I can shoot one while I'm on the ground with my bow. So I hurry up and I get up there and I go to my food plot, and I don't see anything in my food plot, but I still hear that noise down in the woods. So I'm walking down in the woods and I'm getting up close, and I got my bow, ready, and I'm not drawing it. And I'm trying to look over the goldenrods to look down into the woods. And I get to the edge and I'm looking down in there and I don't see anything, but I still hear I hear something break. And as soon as I heard it, I realized it wasn't on the ground. So I looked up, and up in the trees were 2 bear cubs. And what they were doing is they were climbing these 2 pine trees and breaking off all the branches as they were going up. So I hunkered down real slow, got my video camera out. I have one hand because my strap around my bow is still on my wrist, so I had my glove on, so I couldn't just slip my bow off. So I thought I just reached over my backpack with one hand, flipped open the LCD screen, and started recording myself saying, hey, there's 2 bears. And as soon as I did that, the mother was on the ground just on the other side of the bushes, and she did one of these 2 lunges with a big huff, like that, and stood up on her hind legs. And I just stood up, and I didn't have my release with my bow. I just held my bow up for protection and started walking back out of the food plot. And she's just there. You can't see her in the video because everything's black now, but she's just standing there probably 15 yards away on her hind legs, and those two cubs went like firemen down a fireman's pole, just zip right down that tree, and went right to her when she did that, and she was like clicking her teeth a little bit, and I have that all on camera when that happened. You can't see the bears or anything, but you just see me going, breathing heavy and backing out, going, okay, I'm getting out, I'm getting out.
That's crazy. I love hearing stories like that because even in the few years that I've been hunting, I had a black bear try to almost climb my tree stand or the tree I was in with a climber, and it made it like halfway up the tree before I was like yelling at it, but it happened in a split second. Like how fast they can climb trees is incredible. And
it is, yeah.
And then I yelled at him, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna shoot this thing out of self-defense if it keeps coming. But I was like, no,
yeah.
so I shot an arrow at the ground, and I was just like, hey, and it just sat on its butt like a Yogi Bear and just started smelling in the air. It didn't even care. But this thing was like 300 pounds, and I'm like, oh gosh.
Oh, wow.
Normally, my experience with black bears, especially, is if they don't have cubs, they're more afraid of you. And they usually are just running away. And that's what I've noticed in New Hampshire so far. But
yeah,
it's cool. I've had moose encounters. I've had mountain lion.
Yeah, that'd be cool to have moose.
Yeah, moose was there was this one moose, and he was kind of a scaredy cat. I actually found his shed when I was out at college, and he was a baby. He would just hang out with this cow and calf, and I'm more afraid of a cow with her baby than a bull moose any day, personally.
Yeah.
Just because
I
know what he'll do with those front hooves and charge you and stuff, and a motherly instinct is not something you want to play with.
No.
But I got within 15 yards of the bull. I could hear him breathing, so it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
Anyways, well, I won't keep you too much longer, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I've been following you for about 7 years now, so it's cool to.
Oh, thanks. So I'm glad you enjoy the videos, and yeah, it was fun talking about hunting and just the stories that we experience in the outdoors, and yeah, it's been fun conversation.
Yeah, well, I hope you have a good rest of your night, and thank you so much again.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.